Before I get started, I do just want to tell you or ask, how many of you have done alternative processes? Okay, so about half. So for those that don't know, I just want to give you just a little bit of what it means. It's actually a misnomer. They're not alternative processes. What they are historical processes. These are all the processes that were the first. This was the beginning of photography. At the very beginning, they were scientists and experimenters that wanted to get an image on paper. And so what they would do is they would have paper that they would coat with a metal, either silver or platinum, palladium, things like that, that would be onto paper with not film. They would be on paper with a binder, such as gelatin or arrowroot starch, something organic that would hold the metal and make the metal light sensitive, and then expose it to light and then develop it. And they would actually fix it with salt. And a lot of the historical, if you go to the Met right now, they have a fantastic, first of all, they always have fantastic historical techniques along the wall as you walk to where they put up the photography exhibits. But right now they have an exhibit on Civil War photography, and it's huge. And you can see a lot of original tintypes and collodion glass plates and albumin prints that were done in the 1800s. So it's a really nice way to see these processes. But in any event, what we now do is you'll take a negative, and at the time, in the historical 1800s, early 1900s, they would take a paper negative before they had the gelatin negatives and place them on top of a piece of paper that they coated with the light sensitive metals and have a good contact. Okay, so contact print, and we use a contact press, and then expose it to light, but not like lights that we're looking at right now. It would have to be exposed to UV light. So then they would take it into the dark room, or into their, it's not really a dark room, it would be a room actually with the light like we're standing in right now, just subdued light, and develop it. And then you would slowly see the image come up, which, what David and I were talking about this morning, it's the magic of photography to me, is really just being able to see those images come up is so exciting. Very different than just, pressing a button and seeing it appear. So you would just slowly see it come up, which was very exciting. So all the processes in this book are basically contact print processes. You have to have an enlarged negative. The only ones that are not are ones that either are in camera, and I'll tell you what those are when we get to them, or liquid emulsion, and I'll explain that more when we get to some of those samples. So what I did was I put together a slideshow showing you some of the work that's in the book to sort of get you excited about these processes and about all of the photographers that are image makers of today, but working with these wonderful historical techniques. So it's to just give you a taste of what's in this book. So this slide, I think, is pretty funny. This is a partial list of the popular photography apps available a few weeks ago. And I'm sure a few dozen have been added since then. Actually, I know for a fact Emulsion was just added. Tom was here last week. So these are just some of the apps that you can use on your iPhones and, yeah, I guess it's just iPhones and iPads. So I'm going to show you some, just the sort of how people are using it today. And so how you can really enhance what you're doing with your digital as well as film. So this picture on your left is a screenshot that I took of my daughter while I was Skyping with her. We don't have very good internet in my bedroom for some reason, and so every time we would speak to her, this is the image that I got. But I loved the way it looked, and it reminded me of, does anyone know what the image to the right is? Pointillism. It's a pointillism, and it's Seurat. Okay, so that was, every time I looked at her, I was like, I'm looking at this pointillist image, and so I thought that that was really interesting. So this image was taken by a friend who's a constant blogger. But what I thought was interesting is, one, it was taken with Instagram, and how I know that is it's square, or hipstamatic, that's what it is. Hipstamatic is square. And then look at the camera that she has next to her. Polaroid. So iPhone, Polaroid. So kids today, they're shooting with anything. Everything to them is exciting, and to me. I shoot with my iPhone all the time. In fact, I have no music on my iPhone so that I have enough memory in there for the camera, because that's the camera that I walk around with if I'm not shooting, if I'm just walking around. So this is, have you guys heard of Humans of New York? Yeah. Humans of New York, Brandon was not a photographer. He is a self-taught photographer. He has almost 600,000 followers. Maybe by now it's more. He blogs, it's Instagram stuff, Facebook, everything. So pure digital. They are now the tintypists of the 21st century. This is a tintype. Tintype studios opened and took away the money from the portrait artists. All the portrait artists then couldn't make, you know how if you go, near the museums or any tourist spot in New York, they have portrait artists sitting outside, and for $10 you can get your portrait made as a caricature or a quick sketch. Well, when the tintype studios opened, those portrait artists that were painters sort of lost their commercial establishments, and it went to the tintypes. Now, all the bloggers are like the tintype artists of the 21st century. They're all making, well, not all of them are making a living, but a lot of them are making a living, and I would say that more than half of them have never shot a roll of film. So business doesn't have to be four walls anymore. If you look at, I don't know how many of you have ever gone to Photojojo, but it is an amazing resource for fun things to do with photography. But what I find very interesting is look what they're teaching. Do you see? It's a zoetrope, or Zoetrope. Look over on that one. A zoetrope was like a first movie camera, movie machine. You would put the images inside, twirl it, and it would be a movie, a little movie. So they're putting things on their website that are teaching people how to do things that people did in the 1800s. So it's a big mix and match of what's happening, which I think is really exciting. And then there's alternativephotography.com. There's over 100 books on this site on historical techniques, not to mention the 50 plus just on darkroom, not on historical techniques, but on darkroom techniques. The books are offered on this site and Amazon, and of course B&H has quite a few of them as well. So why limit yourself to just digital or just film? This image was taken with my iPhone, and then I made a digital negative, and then I put a platinum print on top of an inkjet print. So at this time in photography, there's no boundaries, no rules. You have 3 centuries of photography to work from, which I think is really exciting. But if the dark rooms don't exist, then that's a little bit of an issue. And that's what's happening in quite a few schools, which I think is sad. And so what's important to me is thinking about all of this in terms of history. History never grows too old or out of date. It's always something that you can relate to hone your skill and to bring your art to another level. So this image by Dan Burkholder is a platinum palladium print on vellum. And vellum is like a tracing paper. So it's very translucent. And once he has his platinum palladium print, then he backs it with gold leaf. And this is getting from what was called an orotone in history. This is by Anu, and the image of the Indian, I guess it's better if I go this way. The picture of the American Indian on the left is an orotone, which means that it was a collodion image, which is an image on glass, and then it was backed with gold, gold metal leafing. So what they're doing is artists today are playing with what was available in the 1800s and then mixing it up and changing it so that they can use it today, but getting their own images out on paper. So she uses historical imagery, and then she juxtaposes her new digital work next to it. So her work is not really an orotone. Actually what it is it's a digital positive on a transparent piece of paper and then backed with gold. So her work especially, I think, draws from history on all levels. She writes about her work and she discusses and uses her images to point out that she mimics her imagery with the images that she gets from the historical context. Art can trigger emotion by the subject, color, and texture. This is Doug Prince. He used to work with transparencies, and he would make boxes and have the transparencies different levels in the box. They were like shadow boxes, and different images were put on each transparency so that they would be 3-dimensional. And now he's working digitally, but he's still taking from history as a role model. Gene also takes a lot of his images from history. These images are done all in his computer. He montages images and has used history to just come up with new inventions. And it's pretty interesting when you come up with, when you think about how they were thinking painting, should painting go away when photography was invented? That was a huge dialogue for years as photography was gaining importance. This image is, they distress their negatives. They use gold or silver leaf and resin to combine textures and imagery, and they play upon fairy tales and dreams. And they use every tool. So they use digital, printmaking, the gold and silver leafing, anything that they can come up with. As people are getting more involved digitally, artists seem to be getting back to basics by not paying attention to how the images begin, but by taking them from computer to darkroom and back again to complete them. So Martha's images are a hybrid image. It's a cameraless, lensless, anything goes type of image. She's made a photogram, then she's taken the objects that she used with the photogram, placed them on top of a scanner, then placed her photogram on top of that, scanned it in, and then printed them out digitally. So these types of images are used artistically and commercially. This is Rob Kendrick. He did a series on 21st century cowboys for National Geographic. There's another photographer, Richard Barnes, who has done the Civil War battlefields in tintypes, which is how they were shot in reality. And I think that was out in National Geographic a few months ago. So artists are using a wide variety of genres to pay attention to and use their knowledge in everyday life. So they can be motivated, artists can be motivated to see how these processes can affect their perceptions. This is a gold tone calotype. Calotype is a silver process. That's the metal that's used. And you can tone the calotypes and you can get all different colors, a tonal range of browns. You'd be surprised how many browns there are. If you ever want to see, or I don't know, do you remember the big box of Crayolas? And it had, 20 skin tones, and it had 40 browns and 50 reds. And you can actually do that with some of these processes, which is pretty exciting. So they build their personal vision where craft and content fuse. Kim uses wood and acrylic and medium, photogram materials, transfers to make her images. It shouldn't really matter how this image was done. It happens to be a tricolor gum. And it doesn't matter if she took days to make it or if she got it from a push of a button, except that it has to do with what will excite you and how are you going to want to make your images come alive. So what's important is, what do these images say, and how exactly can you as the photographer decide how to complete your vision? How would you even know what button to push if you did not know the images existed? These images existed. So this is a collodion tintype, which means that you take a piece of aluminum or tin that has been blackened, and you then dip it into, you pour collodion onto it, and then you dip it into silver, and then you put it into your camera, you shoot it, and then you bring it right back into the darkroom and develop it. And you develop it within 20 seconds. And then your image in front of you goes away, it turns black, which is very scary to watch, and then it comes back up as this beautiful positive. This is a dry plate tintype, and what that means is that instead of having to do what Mark did with keeping everything wet while he put it in it, while he coated it, put it in his camera, and then shot it and then developed it, Rebecca coated her aluminum, let it dry, and then could use it just like large format film because it will last 4 months. And then she can just put it into a plate holder and shoot when she's ready, and then bring the plate holders back to the darkroom and process when she's ready to do that. So the point of all of that was, how would you know how to do this? There's a tintype app, which I find cute. You know, it's fun. But how would you know where that tintype app came from unless you had classes that you could take and learn what these things are? So this is a very interesting area. Mark and France Osterman have a sun enlarger. So this enlarger goes, that's a window behind him, and you would put it outside, and then the piece of paper would go behind it, and that's what they had before electricity. And that's in their studio in Rochester, New York. So the importance of workshops to me is that not only do you get to learn from an instructor, but you also get to learn from students, other students that are in your class. I think workshops are so important because you get to learn from a total peer group, and it's like photo camp, so that you are immersed in learning these processes or whatever you came for a few days to a week to 2 weeks, and you become a community and you learn from each other. So this is a cyanotype, and then with encaustic on top, and encaustic is melted wax, and you can use encaustic so that you can keep building on top, and they use it a lot in paintings and montages so that you can keep putting images on top and have layers. This is Barbara Brommer, David's wife. She just started doing cyanotypes last year, and she has a whole beautiful, beautiful set of them. So they're very tactile. You know, it's just the whole idea of you can really feel those cracks in that doll. Ann Mitchell uses cyanotype. You see the difference in the colors depending on what kind of cyanotype you're doing, which kind of toners you put it in, and then she layers old family pictures on top. So you can use old imagery from the past and put it into your work of today. This is Robert Schaefer, and what he did is he took it years ago. There's no way that you could take a picture at night with cyanotype. It's too slow. You would be there all night, and you need UV light. So he's taken his iPhone, took a night shot, made it into a digital negative, and then made it into a cyanotype. Isker Johnson, what was fun about her is she turned a mistake she did while she was learning into an entire portfolio. So what she did is she was making cyanotypes, and after you coat the paper, you need to let it dry before you put your objects on it, and she didn't let it dry. She just took it, coated her paper, went out into the sun, put all of her objects on it, and they never dried properly, and then when she went to develop it, she got those clouds in the top. And so she started to use that in her portfolio. So mistakes, especially, you know, with these processes, you learn from them, you use them, they're fantastic. You can tone cyanotypes with bark, with different teas, all kinds of things. You name it, if it has a color, you can use it to tone. Stephen Berkman uses these images in his commercial work, so it's not just always about artwork. He shoots a lot of the movie posters. Anytime you see tintypes in movies, they're usually his. Gail has a mixture of things here. These are all wet plate collodions, and she will use glass or tin, whatever she feels like. The ones in the middle without the images on them are by developing them in an inconsistent way. She'll just splash developer on it, and so she'll make different tiled pieces that she can put in between her images as designs. And then the others are either photograms or she enlarges them. So I love this because Mark is taking, he's making a tintype allegory. He's using images that he's seen from the past, but Tinkerbell's in there. And all of his images will do that. They're images that you know you've seen before and seen in other places, but then he'll put a Mickey Mouse character in there. So they're quite funny. So Jen Jansen, these are also wet plate collodion, and what she's done though is the reason she's got that purple color is she will use different colored tins. So they're not, she's not using tin, she's using aluminum. And you can buy all these different color aluminums, and that will then make a difference in what your image will turn into. So in this case, she used purple, and then she mounts them on distressed steel. David was teaching a beginning photography class and noticed that he had 1 million of these Tri-X film cans tossed aside, and decided instead of just throwing them out, he would collect them and then decide what to do with them. So what he does with them is he has taken them, and on the front where this image is, he's done something called Japanning. And that's what they did in the old days. And what that is it's taking asphaltum and painting it onto the front, and then you have to bake it. It's disgusting. I don't know why he does this. You should not do it in your home. You have to do it where, you know, you can't get inundated with the smell. It's like worse than if someone's tarring, you know, the sidewalks. It's absolutely disgusting. But you can see what it looks like on the back, where he's gotten some of it on the back. But it's a pretty cheap way for him to make his metal that he needs for his work. And now what he does is he's been going to dump sites, and he's been getting these big drums that people have been throwing out. He's been putting this asphaltum on that, and then putting the images on the top of the drums. This is Travis. He was my, actually he has a thank you in the book. He was my TA while I was doing the book. He's a chemical wizard. He loves all kinds of chemicals. This is France Scully Osterman, so she's the other part of Mark and France, who I was talking about with the sun enlarger. This particular image was done with collodion. What's so nice about it is you can make a positive on glass and back it with black. You can make a negative on glass and use it, as she did, to make this salt print, or you can put it on tin and have a positive tintype. This is photosynthesis, and then it was put in resin so that it would stay. So what what Ben does is he will put a negative on top of plant life and leave it in the sun for a few months. And then when he brings it in, he's got this image. Now, they're not permanent, but once he puts them into resin, then the image stays there. No air is getting to it. They're not going to continue. So they're really striking. This is another non-permanent type of imagery. This is called a lumen print, and it was done on film. If you have a lot of old paper, different papers turn different colors if you expose them to UV light. So you can take different papers, put a negative on top of them, put them in the sun for a few days to however you have to keep looking at it. It has to have a good contact. You have to be able to take it up so you can see when it's ready. And then once you bring it in, if you put it right into the fix, it will stay, but you'll lose the color. If you leave it, you can scan it, and then you've got your permanent color. Otherwise, it will keep changing. What Clara did is she did the same kind of lumen print, but she used it on film, and then she brought it back inside, and she made a color print. This is a gum print. So Kay is really quite amazing with her gum prints. If you notice, each color has a different end to it, which means that with each color is another layer. Every time you have a color, what you're doing is you're coating a color onto a piece of paper. You're putting your negative down, exposing it, developing it, drying it, and then you put another layer down, another color. So each one is a different, and each time you do that, you have to make sure that your negative is registered. So if you want a sharp image. But these were called fuzzy images when they came out in the 1800s, because even though this particular one looks sharp, if you look really closely, you know, as you're layering it, it's not totally sharp. What I found really exciting and what I started to do when I was doing this book is I took a ceramics class with a teacher. Her name is Kate Mizette, and she taught me how to put images on clay and then you fire them, which I thought was really cool. Graciela Olio is from South America, and she will use gum prints and transfers on her clay. I'm not this good when I made a clay. It was kind of sad, actually. But you, instead of using with regular gum, you use watercolor colors. And with clay, you have to use stains, the stains that are made for firing, because you fire with each color. So she made her pot. She then put on an image in one color, fired it, brought it out, put on another stain, put on more of a, you know, another negative, exposed it, and then had to fire that. And then your last one is a glaze. So Kit, this just is it's a one color gum. And this is Kay, the woman that taught me. So this is a transfer. And this is my first handmade tile. And that was about as much as I could do with the tiles. My pots were sort of sad. So I just stayed with the tiles. And this is a two-color gum with a glaze on top. A lot of people combine all of the different techniques. They will use, like Sarah did, cyanotype as your first coat, and then gum colors on top. so that the cyanotype sort of helps keep that image into the paper. Christina uses her old family images to make her gum prints. And Brenton Hamilton, who teaches at the Main Media Workshops, he uses cutouts and drawings to make his gums. Now, one of the other things I want to talk about with the gum is as you put on layers, as they give you a three-dimensional look, like how Kay and Christina's looked. With Brenton's, you'll notice that it's almost two separate colors. And so it's not as three-dimensional, but it still gives you that look because of the way he used his cutouts and the way he put the paint on. This is a gum by Peter. This is a one-color gum, but with several layers, so that he'll use the same color, but he'll expose it several times. And John, this is a platinum toned calotype. So the calotype again is silver's the metal, but then he tones it with another metal, and it gives you that rich color. And he has a great sense of humor. John will combine his images, play off historical themes. This was very big in the 18th and 19th century with having ghosts come and, you know, the spirit photography. There was a show, I can't remember if it was at the Met or the MoMA, about spirit photography, which was pretty cool. And then Ivan uses children's books to change the meaning. This is a Van Dyke brown. It's similar to calotype. It's just another brown print. And it is it's a richer brown, where calotype is more of a reddish. But again, you can control the color by toning. This is Andrea Modica, and she uses large format negatives, a large format camera, and then she makes platinum palladium prints. And this is her commercial work. She does editorial work for magazines, and she will take her large cameras while, you know, everyone else is sitting with their digital 35mm or their iPhones, and she sets up her shots and uses the large format cameras still today. This is Tina Moss, and this image looks like it's underwater, but it is not. It is, she will take beeswax and shape it and melt it so that it is under her and larger. And then she will coat it with liquid emulsion, which is emulsion in a bottle. You melt it and it becomes liquid, and it's like making your own paper. And you just coat it on the wax, and then she exposes her image onto it, and then she develops it, just like photographic paper. But you notice how there's a couple of cracks and air bubbles. So as she's taking it off her enlarger base, and when it's in the chemicals, she'll get all kinds of cracks and bubbles, and she uses that. So I think she said over half of them fell apart as she was making them. So give you an idea of how long it took. Allison makes these tank images using clay. She makes all of these shadow boxes, and then she puts liquid emulsion on glass and photographs them so that they look like they are done, you know, underwater and within that aquarium look. And Shikai Seng makes, he makes his own pots, and then he coats them with liquid emulsion. He'll expose them with an enlarger, and then he's made you know, you can't put that into a regular tank, so a regular tray. So he's made these tanks that he can dip them in so that he can develop them. You can also use spray bottles to just spray chemicals on them. This is Denise Ross. She has a wonderful site. It's called Light Farm, and you can learn how to make your own. This is homemade liquid emulsion. So instead of buying it in a bottle, she makes it. It looks like spaghetti, and you have to keep straining it and cooking it, and it's a little bit, it's funny. I do collodion, and people think that that's a little bit much. I think this is a little bit much. It's funny how you decide, you know, what you can spend your time doing and what's too much for you. You know, it's like she thinks I'm nuts for doing collodion, and I think she's nuts for doing this. But she's fantastic, and she makes her own film and her own paper. And they're so beautiful, I think. This is hers also. So you see the control she has, because there's a big difference. The other one looked like an etching, and this looks like regular film. This is Andrea again. This was in the New York Times magazine. And then this is Jean-Claude, who is a French photographer. And while Andrea goes for that more romantic look in a lot of her imagery, he's really goes for the sharp and formal. Same process, but it just shows how they're not limited in the least. You know, you can really just go from one end of the spectrum to the other. So while this book is about process, I think that the images really aren't, and that you can learn from these images about composition, about seeing. It doesn't matter how they were made, but it really does matter what these people are saying with the images. And I think that that's something that's important when you think about process photography, where yes, these are processes, but what are you going to do with that process? How are you going to make it your own? So this is Kirk. I know you guys, or I'm thinking you guys are probably interested in how they were made, so that's what I'm doing today, but we can talk about other things at the end. But Kirk uses vellum, that's like the tracing paper, so all of his images are very delicate and luminescent, and a lot of times, in fact, they will not be in just a regular frame. They will be lit from behind so that they're almost like giant slides. They're quite gorgeous. And then here's Mark Nelson, who has written a book on digital negatives. If you want to know about digital negatives, he's one of the guys. Between him and Dan Burkholder, you can't go wrong. You'll learn digital negatives. And he likes to show every tone that's possible within a platinum print. And you can see how you can go from extremely dark to whites. So the tonal range with platinum is absolutely amazing. And then there's Steve Goff, who does a platinum print, and it's more of a flattened image. So more grays and showing more of the real gray tones that platinum is. And then there's David Brommer. Ta-da! That was good timing, David. He's got the best sense of humor of anyone I know. And plus, it's a beautiful print. And I love the rich brown of this and the brush strokes. So within the same process, you're getting totally different meanings. And that says it all, I think. Jessica uses old books, and she'll take them apart, which kills me because I'm a book whore. I love every book around, and she actually rips these books or finds parts of books at sales and then she puts them within her images, and a lot of times she'll, and all of her images are pinhole, so she'll make, so that looks like this huge room. It's this big. She has this wonderful little studio, and everything is very small and compact. She does these pinhole images, and she gets these large negatives, and then she makes images using calotype or cyanotype, a lot of different things. This is a hand-painted cyanotype. Sorry, calotype. So you can, you're using watercolor paper. You can use whatever you want to paint on these images. And one of the things that I just want to add, because I just have some of the other images that I'm showing at the end, but the chemicals, everyone says, oh my God, they're so dangerous. How are you using them? But they're not that dangerous. And think about how long all these photographers that have been around have lived. Ansel Adams in his 90s, Imogen Cunningham, I think she was 100. I mean, we live a long time. Probably because we're having fun in the darkroom and we haven't gone blind from our computers. Yeah, yeah, it's definitely the fixer. So you just, I mean, you need to know what to do to be safe. And anything, I mean, it's dangerous walking across the street. You learned how to walk across the street. You have to learn how to respect the chemicals in the darkroom. Nothing is expensive. Everything is pretty cheap. In fact, they have a cyanotype kit downstairs. It's $20. $20, and you will be able to make 250 8x10s. So it's pretty cheap, and even collodion is not that expensive. What's expensive is if you get involved with buying all the stuff that goes with it. And you don't have to buy all the stuff that goes with it. It's just that this stuff is really cool, and so you want to buy the stuff that goes with it. But you can do all of this without that much money. But you do have to, you know, you have to be a little bit smart about it. Something that you should be sure to get, gloves, apron. If you don't wear glasses, then you should get goggles. And that's when you're mixing. And then when you're doing it, if you're putting your hands in your chemistry, then yes, you should always have gloves on. Some people wear masks when they are mixing the chemicals, and some people don't. I happen to really, sorry. I happen to hate masks. This is my darkroom, and I just have really good ventilation in here. And notice the red on the window. I have this was a kitchen. It's now a darkroom. And so I was lucky enough to have a window in it, and I put red on top of the window, and I can use that anytime except for when I'm loading film, and then I have to pull down a shade. This is the outside of my darkroom. That's what it was made neat by a friend of mine who was taking pictures of my apartment. My desk never looks like this, ever. But it looks good there. This is students at Main Media Workshop learning how to use my portable darkroom. That box is my portable darkroom. What I find interesting is look at the age. I think that kids that haven't had a chance to be in a darkroom eat this stuff up. Half of my students or more are young. It's really very interesting to me and exciting. So this is the inside of my portable darkroom. This red little house back there, this is, I was shooting a wedding in Italy, and this is my, what I travel with. It's a 3-person ice fishing tent. So I can stand up in it, and I can have students come in with me. And so I travel with it because it doesn't weigh as much as my wooden one, and I can shoot it through baggage like golf clubs. So it just goes through golf clubs. And then if you don't want to carry anything with you, we made a darkroom in the trunk of the car with a box, a big box, a U-Haul box. And that's at Santa Fe Workshops. So I'm going to end with Picasso said that every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once you grow up. So it's an exciting time to talk about how everything has really been done before, but with new technology that can be turned into something different by adding old technology, and new visions can be realized. And thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.